Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of The Drop. Greg Wyshynski, Arda, Öcal here with you every Tuesday and Friday, wherever you get your audio podcasts, as well the NHL on ESPN YouTube. Great interview with Lightning head coach Jon Cooper. Wish I had a chance to sit down with him. That is later in the show. But I can't think of anything else to start with than the scandal of the century in the National Hockey League. Jaromir Jagr bobblehead night wish will not have Jaromir Jagr bobbleheads because a bobblehead cartel stole the bobbleheads off a truck, and they will not be present, and they will be mailed to people. At least they'll get them at some point. But who steals a truck full of bobbleheads?
Someone who doesn't realize they're stealing a truck full of bobbleheads. That's who steals it. It's not like they're going to be like, you're walking down the street and some guy's like, yo, man, I got Rolexes, Cartier, 17,000 Jagr bobbleheads. No, it does not work that way. They clearly didn't know what they were getting. The way it's going to work, that it has worked, is that the fans received vouchers from the team with a one-time use barcode. The Penguins said when the bobbleheads are safely located, or they make new bobbleheads to give out. And these bobbleheads, by the way, these Jagr ones, it was the Jagr Salute bobblehead, so it was going to be a pretty dope giveaway. That's when the fans in attendance for that Sharks game will receive it. I think the real crime, Arda, is that the Penguins fans who had tickets to that game went from being able to receive a Jagr bobblehead to simply having tickets to a Penguins Sharks game. That's the real crime.
Yes. This reminds me of when they released the Star Wars Kenner toys back in the 80s. And they were like, we can't produce these to meet the demand, so we're going to sell these IOUs. Like, your parents can buy something that says, we will mail you this toy eventually. Happy holidays. That's what this reminds me of.
They sold empty boxes, basically, and they don't even have the boxes to give away, the Penguins, on this one. So, yeah, it was. They learned of the theft after the shipment didn't arrive for the game. They've reached out to the manufacturer, reached out to the distributor, and came to the conclusion that the bobbleheads were stolen somewhere in California en route to Pittsburgh. So no bobbleheads on Jagr bobblehead night. It's real, again, like one of the Penguins executives, this guy Kevin Acklin, said, who's their president of business operations. It only grows the legend of Jaromir Jagr more. To have
100%.
A shipment of bobbleheads stolen en route to bobblehead night. It's incredible stuff.
Amazing. There could only have been one outcome to this. I want to pull the curtain just a little bit. I also want to give you credit, Wish, for writing this story. I think, I may be wrong here, but I'm pretty confident in saying this might be the fastest turnaround for any story you've ever written. Because I saw the tweet, the Penguins tweet, and then literally minutes later, I got an ESPN alert that said Jagr bobblehead stolen, and I clicked on it. Greg Wyshynski byline. I'm like, man, this man worked overtime to get this posted fast.
Look, there are certain stories that you struggle through. There are certain stories that just speak your bittersweet heart. The idea that we're going to have 17,000 stolen Jaromir Jagr bobbleheads as a punchline among hockey fandom for at least the next decade warms my heart. It's in the pantheon along with Jamie Benn jokes. The fact is I was able to finish that story while making many of those jokes on Twitter. For example, I can't believe that someone just offered me Chris Beach, Ross Lupashek, and Mikhail Sergachev for my box of Jagr bobblehead dolls, which of course was the return from the Capitals for that trade from the back in the day. But again, it couldn't happen to a more perfect player. It ties perfectly into the legend of Jagr. And the great part about it was that he was at the game, despite not having any of the bobbleheads there. So at least you got a little bit more Jagr in your lives, despite not having any Jagrs on your mantle.
Yes, and he also did recently play hockey in North America, which was a sight to see for those who attended the Lemieux fantasy camp. He was wearing Canada Cup Team Canada threads. Which made me laugh. There was a cool picture of him and Lemieux and Sidney Crosby together, and he's wearing the Team Canada Cup threads.
None of this would have happened if Penguins fans had been tracking the Jaromir Jagr bobblehead flights like they were tracking Jaromir Jagr's flights when he might have signed with the Penguins.
Like Taylor Swift style?
They fell off. By the way, I am looking forward to there being a 14-year-old in Pittsburgh in front of a laptop that tracks down the bobbleheads. Probably by the time you hear this podcast, it's going to happen, and it'll be glorious.
So we mentioned Jon Cooper. That's coming up. Before we get there, though, let's play a little game on the show, Wish. This or that. I love when we have games like this on the show, and this one is one of my favorites. So give us the rundown of this edition of This or That.
All right, we're going to play a little bit of This or That. On the drop, we call it one-timers. And here's your first one-timer, Arda. Matt Rempe's 4-game suspension was A, meant to teach him a lesson, or B, meant to keep him out of Sunday's game against the New York Islanders on St. Patrick's Day in Manhattan?
Oh, B, obviously. Obviously, B. It's a conspiracy. It's the same guy that stole the Jagr Bobbleheads. He just wants to cause maximum chaos in the NHL. Very disappointed, Wish.
The idea that after the Matt Martin fight in the Stadium Series, Rempe has only gotten more of a reputation for being Matt Rempe since then. It's St. Patrick's Day. It's in the afternoon. If you've ever been in New York on St. Patrick's Day, the day begins around 7 a.m., I think, at most pubs. It's going to be a raucous crowd, and maybe the NHL said, let's not inject Matt Rempe into that chaos. But I do believe there's probably as good a chance that it is option A. The 4 games was more than I thought he'd get, Arda, and it reminded me of the early days of the Department of Player Safety under Brendan Shanahan, when he used to identify your miscreants, your repeat offenders, and try to send them a message. Now, this is obviously Rempe's first suspension. He's only been in the league for 10 games. He almost has as many penalty minutes as minutes played in that time. But you kind of get the sense of them maybe putting a little mustard on the suspension to be like, all right, dude, let's chill. No reason to chicken wing somebody when you miss a check. And hopefully the message is heard by what is, I think, a better young player than many people give him credit for being. He just needs to kind of learn to hit better, as the Devils pointed out after that game.
One of the clips that people were circulating on social media in relation to the Rempe hit was the Pavel Bure elbow on Shane Churla, which was probably the most egregious elbow in NHL history, certainly in the conversation. And he did not get suspended for, I think he got a $500 fine or something very minor. Definitely as compared to Matt Rempe. And we're obviously in a different era of hockey.
Different era, yeah.
What I'm saying, though, is I would rather this era of hockey where we're at now than where we were. So I'm okay with the 4-game suspension. All that to say.
All right, one-timer number 2. What's the most shocking goal-scoring season? Zach Hyman with 46 goals in 63 games, or Connor Brown with 1 goal in 55, Arda?
Did you see how happy his teammates were? Oh man, That was hilarious. They were almost gonna knock. He was doing the handshake line or the fist bump line after the goal on the bench, and at least 3 Oilers players almost knocked them to the ice. They were so happy.
Yeah, I think I'd have to go with option B for that very reason. Zach Hyman playing with McDavid and Draisaitl and those guys. You and I would have a decent shot at 46 goals if we were playing with those cats. Connor Brown, it was shocking when he didn't have any goals in 54 games, and it became equally as shocking when he finally scored one against the Capitals earlier this week. And like you said, people were throwing hats on the ice for a guy scoring his first goal of the season, and there's just something beautiful about that. So shocking as it was, a happy ending for all as Connor Brown finally gets on the board.
Absolutely. And by the way, Zach Hyman has increased his goal total every year he's been in Edmonton. So he just keeps getting better and better. You answer the next one.
One-timer number 3. The toughest look for a Hughes brother this week was A, Devils coach Travis Green saying that Luke is playing too loose and he's trying to do too much, or B, Quinn Hughes being told to go to the box, please, on the mic from the referee in the Canucks game earlier this week. Obviously for me, it's option B. It's hilarious. Whenever you get to hear the refs on mics during those sort of mic'd up segments during games, it's always interesting to hear the banter. Whenever you get to hear them be candid in front of the entire arena because they don't realize their mic is turned on, it's even funnier. So definitely for me, it's the Quinn Hughes moment for me.
Absolutely. It reminded me of my 4-year-old when I tell her not to eat all the chocolate and she eats all the chocolate, and that's my reaction. Go to the box now, please. Now. I will also, speaking of refs mic'd up, there's a really funny one in the Blackhawks game recently where Connor Bedard was like, Can you please move out of the way when I have the puck? Like, just find a different lane because you're in my way. And then he's
He's
like,
good. Wow.
I know, right? But the ref was like, I'd love to, but I'm slow and you're fast. It's just, I guess, to your point, the honesty is great. I just love anything
That's
mic'd up
great.
is great, but I just love it.
That's great. That's great. One-timer number 4. Expansion to Atlanta is a great idea because A, the market has changed since the failure of the Thrashers to make it an appealing destination for an NHL team, or B, it means Canada will eventually get an 8th team when the Atlanta franchise inevitably fails.
Oh, and what number are we putting it at? 4.5 years, 6.5 years? Where are we over undering this?
6 to 8. We'll go 6 to 8. 6 to 8.
I don't
Look,
know,
man.
man. If they're putting a team in Atlanta this time around, they're going to make sure every T is crossed and I is dotted. I don't think it's going to be like the last 2 iterations.
Yeah, and to the NHL's credit, they've said that the demographics are different. Where the arena is going to be is more going to be convenient to where the fans are. I think they're open to the idea of there being maybe more stable ownership this time. I mean, there's a lot of things that they think are kind of pointing in the direction of Atlanta being a more successful market on the 3rd try for this league. That being said, I do wonder which of the competing bids will end up maybe getting an arena built there. The one that was in the news this week with Anson Carter in Alpharetta, that's one. There's another one in Forsyth County that has gotten a lot of attention in the last year as well. So you have multiple bids trying to build arenas there, probably multiple ownership groups trying to bring a team there. And we kind of wait with bated breath to see where the NHL goes next if they expand. We know Salt Lake City is going to get a team at some point, whether it's through relocation or expansion. Then if it's through expansion, you expect either Houston or Atlanta to be the other city that gets one.
Speaking of Utah, we have a really fun project coming to ESPN.com that is NHL and Utah related in the near future. That's all I'll say. It's a lot of fun, though, and a lot of people are involved. It's going to be cool.
Yeah, you are both involved in it. I feel a certain amount of pressure to try to outdo you in this creative endeavor. We'll see what happens.
I put a lot of thought into it. All I'm going to say is I put a lot of thought into it because I'm like, oh man, there's a lot of creative heads in this one. I got to bring my A game for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, I'm more of a last minute guy. I'll probably just make a cheap one in the last 5 minutes.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, right.
Finally, I'll go watch the Book of Mormon again and just steal material from the best. Finally, topic number 5. The Eastern Conference wildcard race is going to be a wild finish with several teams vying for a few spots, or B, pretty much done because Detroit is imploding and we can't trust the Sabres. What say you, Arda?
The Islanders are making a push, even though they lost recently and their streak ended abruptly, as streaks usually do in the NHL. I do like that we have this competitiveness in the wild card race. So yeah, give me a photo finish. I love photo finishes in the wild card.
I just think based on the probabilities, man. I know Detroit's got the point total, but they're clearly struggling. They're fighting each other in practice. They're missing Dylan Larkin. I feel like they're kind of losing the thread at the wrong time. The Islanders, despite the recent loss you said, have been pretty hot. I kind of think we might have the teams that we're going to have in the playoffs already in playoff position, but we shall see. But speaking of the Eastern Conference wildcard, Arda, here is our conversation with Tampa Bay Lightning coach Jon Cooper, a friend of the show if there ever was one, about Nikita Kucherov for MVP, whether he wants to coach Team Canada at the Olympics, and whether he ever thought about not leaving the bench after being ejected like someone else did this week. Joining us now on the drop, it's Jon Cooper, head coach of the Tampa Bay Lightning. For my money, the best coach in the National Hockey League. He's got a beautiful office. What is that? Like a Hockey Canada thing behind you? What is that? What is your jersey there?
Yeah, that was World Championships 2017.
Right.
And we went to a shootout in the final and lost in the shootout to my boy Victor Hedman and Henrik Lundqvist.
It happens. It happens.
When we got to the shootout, I was like, ooh, this could be tough.
We'll get to some international hockey in a bit, but I wanted to first ask you, of course, about the Lightning. Your group has gone through some adversity this year, my friend. Injuries, Vasi early, obviously.
How old is that? Like that feels like another season ago. But it was this actual season that he was missed the first 25 games.
It's wild. And then you also, had some lineup changes and things like that, dealing with a lot of the different depth players. What was the key for your team overcoming it and being in a playoff spot as we do this interview?
Well, I got to give a lot of credit to our core players. And, one in particular is Nikita Kucherov, who, for my money, has been the best player in the league. He's been the guy that's carried us both ends of the ice. And there's a reason our power play's number one in the league right now. And, a big part is because of him. But it's just every year is different. I can't, they're so hard to explain. The years you don't make the playoffs, the years you win Stanley Cups, you're just faced with so many challenges. But the one biggest thing with this one is there's a picture of our group in the gym, and it's taken at what's the football field in Nashville?
Nissan Stadium.
Nissan Stadium, yeah. So before we were playing, that's 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's 2 years ago. And of the 23 guys in that picture, there's only 8 left.
Incredible.
And so that's a big turnover, in 2 short years. But all the guys that Julian brought in, it took some time for us all to get on the same page, but great group of guys, and I'd have to give a lot of credit to our core, the core group and leaders.
The drop is nothing if not a bully pulpit. I'm a Kucherov for Hart guy. You kind of touched on it before. His numbers, are better than when he won the Hart back in 2019. Yeah. State your case. Nikita Kucherov is MVP.
This is what I would ask. If you took the top 5 to 10 players in the league, and if they were to flip on if all 32 teams are playing and they got to flip on a game and watch one team play, my money would be, and I've talked to a lot of them, that they would turn on the Tampa Bay Lightning, not to see Jon Cooper coach, unfortunately, but to watch Nikita Kucherov.
Yeah.
And I think he garners immense respect from from everybody in the league, but a lot of the best players. And I think that's your biggest compliment and why I think you should win MVP.
What did you make of the All-Star thing? I mean, people were still talking about it now, the All-Star thing. What did you make of the All-Star thing with him?
All I know is that when he played in the game, he played hard and tried to help his team win. In the end, the skills competition is, it's about showing off skill, but in the end, it's a lot about fan participation. And if anybody made the fans participate, it was definitely Cooch.
Excellent point. We mentioned the playoffs. We mentioned injuries. What are the chances that Sergachev could come back for you in the postseason?
I don't want to say never is never, but it was a significant injury. That was a tough night at the Garden, and it's fun or great to see him. He can walk around and stuff now, but for him to get back into game shape, I wouldn't expect to see him till training camp next year. Unfortunately for us.
Unfortunately, yeah. Great defenseman. The next edition of the Battle of Florida is this weekend with the Florida Panthers. You've coached the Lightning since, drumroll please, 2013. My God. You've seen this rivalry. It's a long time, man.
March 2013. So one of these, it's coming up soon on the anniversary date.
That's right. You coming from the crunch. Coops, what was it? Coops Troops at the time? The guys who came up with you? Was that what it was?
Oh, Cooper Troopers.
The Cooper Troopers. Yeah, it was like Kucherov and Tyler Johnson, right? And Platt, I think, was one of them too.
Killorn, Gudis, Richard Panik. There was a bunch of guys.
Yeah. For the people watching the show that just became fans like 3 years ago, this is like hearing about Maurice Richard. Like it just feels it feels like 25 years ago at this point.
So funny. It probably is.
But my question for you is, like, you've been now in with the Lightning since 2013. You've seen this rivalry with Florida morph and change over time. How has it changed in your tenure with the Lightning? This whole thing with the Panthers.
Well, to be honest, like we both probably weren't very good in the beginning, and then we made that, I would consider, many people probably thought, a surprise run to the 2015 final. And then Florida was at the time struggling to make the playoffs. So there was never really kind of that budding rivalry early. And then when Q came in and they restructured. I know Dale Talon a big part of it, and now with Bill Zito and Mo, like, but clearly before them, when that team started to get good and they got good, we happened to be at the peak, and it's been a battle. And I'm telling you, there's so much fun the games to play against those guys, and we we've met them a couple times in the playoffs, and fortunately for us, we've come out on the right end. But I don't know how this season's going to play out for anybody, but they've had a little bit of heartache the last few years in the playoffs, and they just keep coming back, and at some point they're going to be knocking right at the door like they were last year. And it's funny how that works. They're down 3-1 in a playoff series, and I think Marchie had a breakaway at some point to end it, and they just sneak through the President's Trophy champs, and I don't think they've looked back, and they haven't stalled at all. And so well-constructed team that have been through the battles, but we're kind of, I don't care what they say, they've got all these other teams they play, they for sure circle us on the calendar, and as do we. But it's weird, so we're coming up, I don't know, middle of March. It'll be the first time we've been to Florida this year.
Wow. There you go. So yeah, the Rangers and Islanders also haven't played a lot outside of the Stadium Series game too. It's weird. A couple of coaching questions for you. Have you ever considered pulling your goaltender in overtime like John Hines did the other night against the Predators?
Yes, but circumstances, you're prepared for different situations, but I don't know if people understood the downside of doing that, because it does seem like there's an upside, and there definitely was, and Heinze was a hell of a call by him to do that. But you wouldn't see, I don't know, I can't sit here and speak for the coaches, but because that, the points are so valuable in this league, and we're not like soccer where you get 3 for a win and 0 for a loss, so there's those big gaps. Like, every point is valuable. It's just the way we're structured, and to have that potential ability to lose a point, it's that's what makes it hard to pull the goalie in overtime. So it's been considered, but I have not done it. I've not done it yet, and I wouldn't do it.
Yeah,
but
why not? Right?
It was. I thought it's a great call. Puck went in the net, so it was. It was super cool, but they need points, and they can't settle for ones, and they took a swing at it, and they hit it, and good for Heinze. It was a hell of a call.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're only like soccer and diving and an embellishment. That's it. We're not in the standings or anything else. That's the only way we're like soccer. The other question I wanted to ask you coaching wise,
most guys know. Some guys,
most guys know. Exactly. The other question I want to ask you coaching wise. Now, you are obviously polite with the referees. Never a problem with them. All of your communication with the Zebras always on the up and up. Always very positive.
This is going.
Okay, if you were ever kicked out of the game, did you ever consider not leaving?
Well, ironically, it was the same. So naturally, I was the rival or the opposing coach the last when it happened to Torts, and it's hard to watch because you don't see what's going on. So I had no idea. Honestly, I had no idea Torts got kicked out. I thought he just got 2 minutes, and so I didn't get to see anything that had happened prior or till after the game, and so the irony of it was. The same ref that ejected Torts ejected me in the same arena. So a couple years ago, the only time I've been ejected in the league. And honestly, when I got ejected, I didn't know, like, right away I was kicked out. I'm like, I had to look at my assistant. I was like, did he throw me out? And then, there was there's a little bit of embarrassment behind it. I'm like, oh my God, thank goodness it wasn't one arena where I had to walk the ice. Like, at least I could just tuck in behind the bench and get off. But I don't know. I guess it would depend on the circumstance if I wanted to leg it out a little bit longer and get my point heard. But when it happened to me, I left with my tail between my legs.
So you weren't trying to Billy Martin it or Lou Piniella it and bump the umpire to get your team going. That's not what you were trying to do when you got kicked out.
Not in actually. Well, let me say this. A big part of why I was it was actually a similar circumstance because we were behind in the game. And, there's things you do. Like, I know there's times I do a goalie challenge when I know I'm losing it. I'm doing it to have my goalies back and to give him a chance, knowing full well on the bench, we're going to lose this, boys. We're going to have to kill this penalty off.
Finally, you got the Hockey Canada sweater behind you back when you were coaching in Worlds. We've got the Four Nations tournament next year. We've got the 2026 Olympics in Italy. You were set to coach Team Canada in Beijing before COVID ruined everything.
Yeah.
Do you want to coach Team Canada at either of these events, Cooper?
Anytime you have an opportunity to coach Team Canada, I'm first in line to raise my hand, as with every coach that's proud Canadian. I'm sure it'd be the same with any other country if you have that opportunity. It was a stinger not being able to go in 2022, and because it's so much fun. International tournaments are great, and it's not only are you getting to coach like the best players in the countries and just be on the ice for that. Like, I remember back Team North America being a part of that group and just watching all the best players in the league, get together and play in a tournament. And the Olympics is surely a different animal, and but it's always cool that I can sit back and say, hey, I had Austin Matthews was on the bench, and the Connor McDavid and Nathan McKinnon, and you just go down the list of guys that now I know today, and it's pretty cool that I've had that opportunity. And so doing these international events they're so much fun, but it makes you proud as a Canadian to have that opportunity. And so it was a stinger not to be able to go in 2022, and who knows what's going to happen moving forward. But I know whoever it is going to do a heck of a job for us.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you get to do it so we can see you eke by with a line of Bedard, Crosby, and McDavid. We'll see if you can do okay with a trio like that as the coach of Team Canada. Jon Cooper, you're the best. Best of luck. Hope to see you in the playoffs, and thanks for doing the drop.
Anytime for you, buddy, and congratulations on the little one.
Big thanks to Jon Cooper for joining the show. He is always a great listen and a great interview, isn't he?
He's fantastic and thoughtful and gets it. I think the two words I use for Jon Cooper is gets it. Like, he understands what should happen in interviews. He understands the media game. I think when he's done coaching, whenever that might be, and again, like, he's coached in Tampa for now over a decade, I think he's going to do well for himself sitting on a panel on one of our rights holders at some point, because he's just great at it.
Absolutely. So Cooper's Tampa Bay Lightning have been in a pretty hot rivalry recently with their state rival, the Florida Panthers. And I wonder where that ranks to Greg Wyshynski in terms of the best rivalries in the NHL today. You actually wrote about this. It's up on ESPN.com right now. But why don't we break down, in your opinion, the top 5 best rivalries in hockey today, or in the NHL today?
Yeah, in the NHL. I mean, if it's hockey, obviously it's the U.S. versus Canada women. Yeah. We all know that is the best rivalry.
That's
hockey.
Number 1 by far. Yeah.
That's number 1. Number 1 in practice, number 1 in our hearts. Number 5 on this list of the top NHL team versus team rivalries, the Toronto Maple Leafs versus the Boston Bruins. Now, obviously, this has been a lopsided rivalry in the playoffs, as the Bruins have beaten the Leafs 3 times in 7-game series. They needed game 7 each time over the last 11 seasons. And Arda, as you know, these are not just pedestrian series. These are the classic "it was 4-1" defeat. This is the two Nazem Kadri suspension series. These are series that have inflicted copious amounts of pain on Leafs fans. But as we've talked about on this show before, my friend, this is also the opportunity, should they meet in the playoffs, and based on the current standings, there's a very good chance it could be in the first round, that the Leafs could overcome their tormentors, much like the Capitals did the Penguins when the Caps won the Cup, and use that as wind in their sails for the rest of a playoff run. What say you?
I say that could very well happen. We could also see them vanquish the Bruins and then lose in 5 games the next round, like they did last season when they finally vanquished their drought of not winning a playoff series. Anything can happen, Wish, but you bringing up this Leafs futility makes me feel like you stole my Jagr bobblehead. So thanks a lot, buddy.
All 17,000 of them. The New York, by the way, as a Leafs fan, you do get a scannable voucher for a future playoff series win if you do lose to the Bruins.
Oh, thank you. That's very nice of you. Appreciate it. It's 15 years down the line, but at least
it doesn't have an expiration date. Number 4, New Jersey Devils versus the New York Rangers. That's your fourth most intense NHL team versus team rivalry. Obviously, the Rangers and Islanders have their own rivalry, but I think this one probably takes the cake. This rivalry was sort of a dormant volcano for a while. For maybe about a decade. And then last season, it spewed hot magma all over the NHL, obviously with the Devils becoming competitive again, that playoff series against the Rangers, rallying from 2 games down to win the series. The Rangers kind of like changing everything they do based on what they did not do against the Devils, vis-a-vis play with speed. And then this season, the Rangers have owned them. The Devils team that appeared last year did not appear this season. But we were reminded of how intense this rivalry is, I think, recently when they played and Matt Rempe was suspended for 4 games for hitting Jonas Siegenthaler. The Devils wanted to fight the guy all night. Clearly a competitive balance right now between these teams. They obviously are not going to meet in the playoffs again, but I do think the Devils-Rangers rivalry has been rekindled and should be a good one if the Devils can get their act together.
I do want to say we were both at that game at MSG on Monday.
We
were sitting beside each other, and we heard the crowd. Like, Rempe mania was a thing. Like, he steps on the ice, he gets cheered. He touches the puck, he gets cheered. He gets an applause when he leaves to the bench for after a shift. But you can also hear Devils fans, pockets of them around MSG when McDermott was challenging him, throwing expletives on the ice and, fight him. I felt the rivalry in that building on Monday. And quite frankly, as a neutral hockey, just a fan of hockey, you love to see that.
There's definitely been a larger influx of Devils fans at MSG in the last decade. I can say that as someone who's gone to those games throughout my life. I think part of it is the Devils getting better during the Jack Hughes era. I think also part of it, Arda, is a lot of kids who grew up as Devils fans in Jersey, moving to New York, getting jobs that pay well, and then buying tickets to see the Devils.
And buying tickets to see the Devils, yeah.
I think there's a lot of that going on too at MSG personally. But Amazing. You're right. Like when those games are competitive, I've been in that building and heard Devils fans do like mocking Igor chants when Shesterkin's getting beat by the Devils. So I mean, like there's the rivalry is real, it's intense, and it's great to have it back. Number 3 is the aforementioned Battle of Florida. The Panthers, the Lightning, a lot of animosity there. I think Coop said it best when he said, it is now a game that both teams have circled on the calendar versus maybe the Panthers being the ones who circled it in the past. And obviously the roles are reversed. I mean, you have the Panthers atop the conference looking to win the President's Trophy, having gone to the Cup final last year, and all of a sudden the Lightning are the team that are struggling to try to get in on the bubble. So great, intense games, 2 very good teams that don't like each other, and I think the 3rd best rivalry in hockey.
Awesome. What's number 2?
I mean, you got to go classic sometimes. Some of the honorable mentions we had were those classic ones like Boston, Montreal. The Capitals and Penguins didn't make the top 10 because I think that rivalry has certainly changed and gone a little bit dormant. But the Battle of Alberta, my friend, never fails to deliver. Even when the Flames are a little bit more inconsequential and the Oilers have their eyes on the Stanley Cup, you still get games like you had in the most recent meeting where you had fights and misconducts and everything like that. It still means so much to those players. It still means so much to those fans. For my money, whenever the Flames and Oilers meet, you're going to get a good one. Number 2 on my list for NHL rivalries. What say you?
I agree with the placement of it. I will also add, knowing a lot of people in Alberta, that is the rivalry that they care about the most. Period. Yeah. It matters. That is their number one concern. If you are an Oilers fan or you even live in the city of Edmonton and you're not a hockey fan, that still matters. No, we got to beat Calgary. Like that is a mindset, a paradigm that exists in both cities, in Calgary and Edmonton. And so I add value to the rivalry because of the importance of the rivalry in those 2 cities. So yes, I agree.
Even more so than the Elks and the Stampeders and the CFL, Arda?
Shocking, I know. It's unbelievable. What is Red Deer in all of this, right? They're like right in the middle. What do they do? Who knows? Right. They're split right down the middle. What's number 1?
Number 1 is so the last time we did this list was 2 years ago. And number 2 on that list is now number 1 because obviously some conditions have changed. It's the Vegas Golden Knights against everyone. That is the best team rivalry in the NHL right now. They are the big bad. They are the Dallas Cowboys. In the last 2 years, I mean, 2 years ago they were number 2 because you had rivalries against, the Pacific Division teams, the Capitals based on the Stanley Cup Final. You had, the Wild fans hating the Golden Knights because of the way they did Fleury bad. And that's before they win the cup. They swagger all over the place doing so. They have their long-term injured reserve shenanigans. They managed to somehow, bring in Tomas Hertl and Noah Hannafin and Anthony Mantha at the trade deadline, despite not really having anything to trade. Like, they are the big bad right now in the NHL. Everybody wants to get their shots in on them, and they love it. They absolutely love it in Vegas. They accept their role as the evil empire of the NHL. And Vegas versus everyone is clearly the best team rivalry we have right now.
So what you're saying is this is like the John Cena U.S. title open challenge, except if John Cena were full-fledged heel and the Vegas Golden Knights just go city to city and just challenge everyone and just everyone hates them. Okay.
Right. If John Cena was the guy who uncaringly trades beloved players in the offseason for salary cap management reasons and also has in-season salary cap chicanery, then yeah, they would be exactly what it is. But
wait. I got one thing to say. So sorry. On LTIR, you can't see them.
Exactly. The other thing too, though, about if you wanted to break it down to a granular level, I think that the Oilers and Vegas might be the duo that's on track to have the most intense rivalry, just based on their playoff history. And obviously in the past, the Sharks were the big rival. The Kings have had their day. But Vegas, everybody hates Vegas, man. It's Vegas versus everyone. And I think that's your biggest team rivalry in the league right now.
Everyone hates Vegas, apparently, but we don't hate you. Thank you very much for listening to the show and watching us. Whether you're listening to us wherever you get your audio podcasts and the NHL and ESPN YouTube every Tuesday and Friday, we will be there for you and with you. Throw some comments in there as well on the YouTube video because we will happily interact with them. Enjoy the weekend.
Best comment on the YouTube channel, by the way, wins. I have it under this desk. I have 17,000 bobbleheads that were gifted to me. I don't know what the box contains, but whoever leaves the best comment in the video, I will ship them to you post haste.
Yeah, they're actually Greg Wyshynski bobbleheads. Somehow yours also got stolen.
Dude, they don't have enough plastic to make that head. I'm sorry. It doesn't exist. It would bankrupt companies.
That's right. Yes. But Jagr, yes. Wyshynski, no. Thanks for listening and watching, everybody. We'll see you next week.